Hello and welcome back to the Joyful Soul Creates. Charlotte here, and I hope you're not bored of hops yet because I'm part of another one today. This is celebrating Sabrina from Scrappy Tails Crafts, who has just hit 3,000 subscribers. So we're having a hop to celebrate that, and there are lots of prizes which I will tell you more about in a little bit. The theme of the hop is Slimline. So I'm going to begin by making my Slimline card. If you're in the US, you will normally be using 8.5 by 11 card to start making your card bases. I'm using an A4 card, so it's actually 8.25 wide, but it's not that huge a difference. So my piece is cut to 8.25 by 7, and I'm scoring at 3.5. As I said, if you're working with 8.5 inch cardstock, you can do that as 8.5 by 7 and again score at the 3.5 mark. I have then masked off the edge of my card because I'm going to be ink blending and I don't want to get any of that ink onto the back. And I'm using distress inks and ink blending tools for this ink blending. I have Mowed Lawn and Spun Sugar, and I'm going for a kind of watermelon look. I know watermelons are red usually and not pink, but I don't have a red distress ink. I do have a red distress oxide, but I do not have a green distress oxide, and I wanted to be consistent, so I decided to go with the distress inks so I could have green and the pink works well enough. So as I said, I'll start by ink blending the bottom portion of the card base with that Mowed Lawn, and then I'm going to use the Spun Sugar to cover pretty much the rest of the card. I will leave a very slight gap of white between the two, which is like how watermelon is anyway, so I thought that would work well enough and saves making mud because pink and green don't really blend well together, so you don't really want to overlap those. Whilst I'm doing that ink blending, as I said, this is part of a hop and it's a hashtag driven hop, so you can use the hashtag Scrappy Tails Slimline 3K to see all the participants. I believe there are 12 of us taking part, something like that. All of us are, of course, making slimline cards, so there will be lots of inspiration for that style of card for you. Even if you don't make slimline cards yourself, you might find it interesting to watch because you can often scale these designs to fit your regular A2 size cards. For example, the layout I'm using for this card is actually the same one that I used on one of my Under the Sea cards, and I will link to that one in the top right hand corner if you'd like to see that. Back to the card briefly, I would just remove the mask, and as I was doing this I noticed I had got some blue on the inside of my card because obviously I hadn't cleaned my craft mat quite well enough from all the sea ink blending I'd been doing over the last few days. So once I have my mask off, I will flip that over and just use a sand razor to tidy that up, and it does all come off cleanly so it doesn't leave any mess on the inside of my card. The prizes for this hop, there are 7 possible gift cards to be won, so 7 lucky winners. Sabrina is giving away 2 $25 gift cards, 1 to Not Too Shabby and 1 to Trinity Stamps. And in addition to that, Hero Arts, Simon Says Stamp, Honeybee Stamps, Trinity Stamps and Not Too Shabby are each giving away a $25 gift certificate. So loads of prizes to be won, and all you have to do is leave a comment on each of the videos and consider subscribing as well. The more comments you leave, the more chance you have to win. So good luck with that. With my background completed, I'm working on my focal element and I am creating a cupcake. I'm using STAMPlorations Cupcake Builder 2 dies, and I have a scrap of white card and I'm just measuring how much space I need for each of the elements. So that's the top kind of icing portion of the cupcake, the base of the cupcake and the wrapper. And once I've marked out what space I need for those, I'm again going to do some ink blending, and I'm using the same colour inks as I did for my background. So the pink for the icing and the green for the base of the cupcake and also the cupcake wrapper. Or I suppose you could consider both of them the cupcake wrappers, the way they layer together. And for the top portion of that green base, I'm going to ink blend more heavily so that there will be a bit of a differentiation between the two shades of green, just to add some interest and variation there. You could use any inks you want for this. You can use, as I said, Distress Oxides if you have the colours that you want, which I don't because I only have quite a limited selection of all my inks. Catherine Paula inks also work well for ink blending. I used those for creating my sea background on yesterday's card, which you may have seen. So really whatever you like to use just to get the look you are after. Once I had those pieces ink blended, I did die cut them out with the coordinating dies, and I also used the base die to cut a piece of white cardstock and create the base of the cupcake. This cupcake does have a cherry on top, and there is a separate cherry die as well, but I didn't want the cherry, so I just carefully trimmed that away both from my icing piece and the back piece. And then I wanted to add some shine and just extra interest to some of the portions of my cupcake. So I'm using the topmost layer of that base part, the green base part, and also the icing. And I have pressed my embossing ink onto those, and I'm just going to sprinkle them with clear embossing powder. And then have my heat gun warming off to the side just whilst I tidy away the extra powder. I want to get the heat gun nice and hot. I put the pieces into my splat box, that way I don't have to hold on to them and burn my fingers, and just heat set that. I do let them cool down a moment before I pick them up because otherwise the embossing powder can be very hot and you might smudge it as well. Now that all those elements are ready, I'm going to adhere all the pieces of my cupcake together. So I'm using a Nuvo Smooth Precision glue pen to put just dots of adhesive along the narrow backs of this topmost piece of the cupcake base. This is because obviously I don't want any of the glue to smudge out and make a mess. And with that in mind, I did press my piece of scrap paper onto the back of it just to pick up any excess glue, again, so that it's not going to smudge out and make a mess. I can then line it up onto the other piece of green cupcake base and just put my acrylic block on it just to weigh it down whilst it glued together. I'll use Tombow Monomolte liquid glue for adhering the rest because it's not quite so delicate, so I don't need the precision of the glue pen. And I will put that on the back of the base first, and again line that up carefully on the cupcake. And this is really easy to line up. And then I will do the same with the icing as well. If you're worried about the spacing when adhering the pieces together, you could ink blend your back piece as well, but I didn't have any issues there. Off screen, I have die cut 2 MFT banner dies, stitched banner dies. One I have extended, and I did show in a previous video how I did that. I then stamped the sentiment "You Are the Sweetest" from Love from Lizi's Sweet Treats stamp set onto the frontmost banner, and I will use double-sided tape to adhere that over my cupcake. I chose the double-sided tape because I thought that would be most secure against the texture of that piece. And I'll then use some more double-sided tape to adhere the cupcake over the backmost banner, and I used the lines of my grid mat to help get that lined up. Before adhering the cupcake to my card base, I added an extra layer onto it just so that it will be level, because of course with the banner behind it, if I put glue on the banner and the cupcake, it would bend very slightly because it's not level. So I'm just using some card of the same thickness of that banner, and that way it will be nice and level. Once I've got those into place, I'm going to use the Tombow glue again to adhere that onto my piece of vellum. And again, I will use the lines of my grid mat to make sure I get it nice and straight. And I've intentionally positioned this to somewhat mask the divide between the pink and the green, just to hide any problems with the ink blending there. There was also a bit of a smudge in the green as well, which my cupcake is covering up very nicely. The reason I chose the vellum for my background is it mutes down the ink blending, so that the cupcake's not getting lost in it so much whilst not covering up completely. And of course I've made the vellum slightly smaller than the card base so there is a border of the full strength ink blending. I had considered doing a white panel but decided the vellum would be best in the end. After adhering the cupcake and banners on, I did trim them down so they were flush with the edge of the vellum. And then I'm going to finish off the watermelon look of my icing by adding some Nuvo crystal drops in ebony black just randomly across the cupcake. And here you can see my finished sweet watermelon cupcake card. As I said, this is a hashtag driven hop, so you do need to click on the hashtag to find all the participants, and again, comment on as many as you can for more chances to win some of the prizes. A huge congratulations to Sabrina for the subscriber milestone, and thank you for having me along as part of the hop. If you enjoyed this video, please do press the thumbs up button to let me know. Let me know in the comments what your favourite summer sweet treat is. Do you like watermelon? I don't, but my husband does. If you're not yet a subscriber, you can subscribe by clicking the button showing on screen now, and I hope you will enjoy hopping through the rest of the hop. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again in the next video. Bye!